In the autumn of 2025, the light hits the Zagros mountains differently. As the heat of the Iraqi summer fades, the valleys turn a deep amber, and the ground softens just enough for the spade. It was in this specific light, in the Kurdistan region of Iraq, that a team of archaeologists from the University of Coimbra and the University of Cambridge stood looking down at a patch of earth that shouldn't have existed. They were excavating a site called Kani Shaie. For years, the history books told us a very specific story about this region. They told us that civilization, the very concept of the city and the state, was invented in the south, in the marshy flatlands of Mesopotamia, and that the mountains were just a wild frontier, a place to be conquered or exploited. But the 2025 excavation season at Kani Shaie has shattered that narrative. What they found was not a primitive village, and it wasn't a military garrison imposed by a foreign power. It was a sophisticated cosmopolitan center that fundamentally changes how we understand the dawn of human history. To understand why this discovery is so groundbreaking, we have to travel back 5,500 years, to the 4th millennium BCE, and look at the engine of history that was the Uruk expansion. Imagine the world in 3500 BCE. In the southern alluvium of modern-day Iraq, near the Euphrates, the city of Uruk had become the first true metropolis on Earth. This wasn't just a large village, it was a social explosion. Tens of thousands of people were packed together, leading to the invention of bureaucracy, mass production, and the state itself. But this new urban beast was hungry. The south was rich in mud and grain, but it had no metal, no hard stone, and no quality timber. To survive, Uruk had to expand. For decades, archaeologists believed this expansion was the world's first colonial empire. The theory was called center and periphery. The powerful center, Uruk, sent out merchants and soldiers to dominate the weaker periphery, setting up fortified trading posts to strip the mountains of their copper and wood. It is a narrative of domination. And until recently, sites like Göbekli Tepe in western Iran seemed to prove it, with its famous oval compound that looked suspiciously like a gated community for foreign merchants, walled off from the locals. But the Zagros mountains are rugged, ancient, and complex, and the people living there were not blank slates waiting to be civilized. This brings us back to the Bazian Valley and the site of Kani Shaie. It is a small site, covering just over 2 hectares and rising 15 meters above the plain. If you were just hunting for size, you would miss it. But in archaeology, location is everything. Kani Shaie sits on a strategic artery connecting modern Kirkuk to Suleymaniye. It is a gatekeeper. Unlike the arid south, where farming is impossible without massive irrigation canals, the Bazian Valley is a green oasis where rain-fed agriculture thrives. The people here were wealthy in grain long before the first Uruk merchant arrived. Excavations led by Steve Renette, Andrew Tom, and Maria de Consejo Lopes have shown the site was occupied continuously from 5000 to 2500 BCE, but it is the late Chalcolithic levels, specifically the layer contemporary with the Uruk expansion, that delivered the shock of the 2025 season. On the upper mound, the team uncovered a monumental building dating to roughly 3300 BCE. The architecture was striking. The walls were thick, designed to project power, but it was the debris scattered across the floor that stopped the excavators in their tracks. They found clay wall cones. These are small, cone-shaped pieces of baked clay, dipped in black, red, or white paint. In the great city of Uruk, hundreds of miles to the south, architects would push thousands of these cones into wet plaster to create stunning geometric mosaic patterns on the walls of their holiest temples. To find these cones here, in a small mountain center, was a revelation. It implies that the building wasn't just a house. It was a high-status administrative or cultic complex that spoke the visual language of the southern superpowers. Inside this complex, the artifacts told a story of immense reach. The team recovered a fragment of a gold pendant. This is incredibly rare for this period. Gold does not occur naturally in the river plains of Mesopotamia or in the limestone hills of the Zagros. It had to come from the Far East, perhaps from Afghanistan or central Iran. Its presence proves that Kani Shaie was plugged into the long-distance luxury trade networks. Alongside the gold, they found cylinder seals. These are small stone cylinders carved with intricate images of labor, animals, and administration. When rolled over wet clay, they created a unique signature. These were the credit cards and security badges of the ancient world, used to lock doors and sign documents. Most significantly, the team found a clay tablet bearing a seal impression and a numerical sign. This is proto-writing. It shows that the highlanders weren't just bartering, they were accounting. They were using the specific administrative technology of the Uruk state to manage a complex warehouse economy. This is where the old colonial narrative falls apart. If Kani Shaie were simply a colony of southerners, we would expect to find their pottery imported wholesale. We would expect a little enclave of Uruk transplanted into the mountains. But the 2025 analysis revealed something far more nuanced. It introduced a concept archaeologists are calling glocalization. It is the blending of global trends with deep local traditions. The pottery provides the smoking gun. At a nearby site called Girdi Kala, excavators found a kiln that produced pottery exactly like the South, 100% Uruk style, likely made by an immigrant potter. But at Kani Shaie, just a short distance away, the story was different. The people used the famous beveled rim bowls, which are essentially the disposable styrofoam cups of the 4th millennium, used for rationing grain. But while the shape was global, the recipe was local. The 2025 materials analysis showed that the majority of pottery at Kani Shaie was made using local northern techniques, specifically using chaff temper, vegetable matter mixed into the clay, rather than the mineral grit preferred in the South. This is a crucial distinction. It means the people making these pots were not foreigners. They were locals who chose to adopt the global style. This fundamentally changes the power dynamic. The people of Kani Shaie were not passive subjects being exploited by an empire. They were savvy intermediaries. They were Zagros highlanders who looked at the rising power of the South and decided to emulate it. They adopted the cylinder seal, the wall cone, and the ration bowl because these things signaled sophistication and prestige. They were participating in the first urban revolution on their own terms. The monumental building likely served as a secure warehouse and a cultic center for the trade route. Through its doors passed the raw materials that built the Bronze Age: copper from the Iranian plateau, bitumen from the foothills for waterproofing boats, and timber, which was vital for the roof beams of treeless Sumer. The gold and carnelian found at the site hint at the early Silk Road, bringing lapis lazuli from the mountains of Afghanistan. We have to remember the geography. The Zagros Mountains are brutal. Ethnographic studies of the Bakhtiari nomads remind us that these passes are blocked by snow for months. The rivers are treacherous. A site like Kani Shaie would have been a safe harbor, a place for caravans to rest, restock with the valley's surplus grain, and negotiate safe passage with the local chiefs before descending into the Mesopotamian plains. The comparison with the site of Godin Tepe is instructive here. At Godin, the Uruk presence was walled off in an enclave, suggesting tension or segregation. At Kani Shaie, there is no foreign quarter. The Uruk culture is mixed right into the public buildings. This implies integration. The local elites used southern culture to bolster their own authority. Eventually, however, the network broke. Around 3100 BCE, the Uruk world system collapsed. Whether it was due to overextension, climate change, or resistance from the highlands, the result was violence. Kani Shaie was not spared. The excavations reveal a massive destruction layer where the Uruk period buildings were burned to the ground. But the site did not die. Interestingly, the levels immediately following the destruction show a complete cultural reset. The global economy shattered, and the region reverted to regionalism. The pottery shifts to the Ninevite Five and scarletware traditions. The administration became less bureaucratic and more local. The wall cones and the proto-writing disappeared. The findings from the autumn of 2025 at Kani Shaie have taught us that the dawn of civilization was not a monologue spoken by the city of Uruk. It was a dialogue. The so-called barbarians of the mountains were actually sophisticated architects of the Bronze Age economy. They didn't just receive civilization, they adapted it, reshaped it, and made it their own. As the archaeologists backfilled the trenches at the end of the season, leaving the monumental building to sleep once more under the earth, the legacy of Kani Shaie remains clear. It stands as a testament to the complexity of the ancient world, reminding us that civilization is rarely just exported from the center. It is reinvented on the periphery.